All right, we are back with part 5 of Napoleon in Italy. This is Battle of Rivoli. Uh, so this is the end of the Italian campaign on Epic History TV's channel, at least in this playlist. So I'm excited to see how it ends. We've had some really good insight in the last 4 videos, and then Toulon as well, of how Napoleon got his start as the leader and the general and the figure that he becomes. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens here, how he can kind of finagle this and get a win out of Italy and move on. Thank you for following along too, guys, and subscribing, commenting. I really appreciate it. I mean, it's really awesome to see you guys add context and information in the comments to my questions I have. It helps me out a lot to understand more. And then also thank you to Epic History TV for this. Go to their channel, subscribe. Without them, I mean, we wouldn't have this content. So,
January 1797. A new year, but familiar problems for 27-year-old General Bonaparte, waging war against the Austrians in northern Italy. He has the great fortress city of Mantua under siege. And after a narrow victory at Arcole, he's once again driven back the Austrian armies, trying to march to its aid. But the French army of Italy is in a ragged state.
yeah.
Troops have not been paid for weeks. Their uniforms are disintegrating. Their shoes are broken. And above all, they're hungry. One of Napoleon's major concerns is the wretched state of medical care for his men. The hospitals lack everything. Our wounded are lying on the floors and in the most horrible state of destitution.
Yeah, at this time, I mean, the technology was not there for medical. It just wasn't. Most of these wars, if you look at for example, the U.S. Civil War, I don't know if I guess I don't know the exact amount, but it was a lot. I think there was maybe not a majority, but close to a majority of guys died from disease, and from, you get shot, it gets infected, there's nothing to save you. So during these times, they just didn't have much. And like even some of these pictures, like this painting, look at the guy's hand is amputated. This guy's got bandages, this guy bandages. I mean, any one of these wounds can get infected, and you can just die miserable death from germs, not necessarily from the wound itself, but what gets in the wound before it heals. Obviously it looks like they're laying in like a barn or something. I wouldn't really consider that a very clean environment. So unfortunately, a lot of guys would pass away if they had even like basic antibiotics. A lot of these guys could be saved.
It's not just a question of saving lives and getting wounded men back to their units. Medical care affects morale.
Yeah.
As troops going into combat want to know that if the worst happens, they'll be looked after.
Right, yeah.
Conditions are much worse for the Austrian garrison of Mantua, commanded by Field Marshal Wurmser. In 4 months of siege, 9,000 soldiers have died from disease, wounds, or the effects of malnutrition.
Wow.
Survivors live off horse meat, civilians off rats and dogs. Even these miserable rations will run out by the 27th of January, just a few weeks away. The clock is ticking. The Austrians must relieve Mantua by that date, or lose the city. And with it, the war in Italy.
Yep. The enemy is withdrawing his troops from the Rhine to send them to Italy. Do the same. Help us. We are only asking for more men. I gotta sneeze real quick. Okay, I'm back. Yeah. I mean, Napoleon's been asking for more men for a while now, so let's see if the Directory honors that request. But I feel bad for the Austrians in a way. I mean, obviously, I understand it's war, and they're not that they did it to themselves, but they put more men in the city. They increased the garrison there, knowing that there's swampy areas out there, malaria, and there's mosquitoes, and and of course the citizens of Mantua, the civilians, like what are they? They're kind of just screwed too. So, but we'll see if they can, what they can do against Napoleon.
Napoleon, having received just 7,000 reinforcements, prepares to meet Alvinci's advance.
Okay.
He will not only be outnumbered, he doesn't know where his enemy will strike. And Napoleon must hold one division back to cover Wormser's garrison. It's commanded once more by General Serrurier, recovered from his long illness.
Okay.
Augereau's division watches the Adige, while Massena guards Verona. The Northern Division has a new commander. Napoleon has sacked Vaubois for his poor performance and put in his place General Barthélemy Joubert. He is a hard-working, brave, and exceptionally modest commander, and like Napoleon, just 27 years old.
Wow. Okay. That's cool.
General Ray is in reserve south of Lake Garda. General Alvinci has received 14,000 reinforcements and orders to relieve Mantua as soon as possible. He is eager to march, but heavy snow and the late arrival of equipment and supplies delays his advance until the 7th of January. The first columns on the move are Provera and Berlich. But their offensive is merely a diversion intended to draw Napoleon's attention away from the main threat, which will be coming down the Adige Valley. Alvinci has divided this force into 6 columns. Their mission is to envelop and destroy Joubert's division at Rivoli and clear the path to Mantua. But Rivoli is a strong defensive position. They must hit it hard and fast before the French can respond.
Right.
Napoleon, assuming any Austrian advance is still weeks away, has traveled to the Papal States with a column of troops commanded by Colonel Lannes.
Really?
They intend to put a little pressure on the Pope, who continues to stir opposition to France. However, as soon as he receives reports of enemy movement, Napoleon races back to his headquarters at Rovabella. By now, Alvinci's forces have also begun to advance, but serious planning failures quickly emerge. Lusignan's first column, on the right flank of the advance, has orders to cross the slopes of Monte Baldo and attack Joubert from the rear. It's soon clear that these orders are wildly optimistic,
What the?
dreamed up by staff officers who'd not seen the terrain.
Yeah, that doesn't look very good for marching. I guess I don't know how many people are in his army, but I would be very skeptical that would be, well put together, because I mean, it's winter, for one, and now you're going to have these guys cross mountains. I mean, it's not like a hill. It's an actual mountain.
The peak of Monte Baldo is more than 7,000 feet high. Its slopes are covered in deep snow and ice. The paths are treacherous, even more so after dark, and there is no firewood for making camp. Only by taking a wide detour can Lusignan make any progress at all, whilst losing 200 men to exhaustion and exposure.
Right.
Meanwhile, the 2nd and 3rd Austrian columns reach the French outpost at Ferrara. An initial attack is repulsed, and following their orders, they wait for Lusignan's column to appear before launching a second attack. However, Lusignan's column is not yet in sight. Alvinci's plan relies on swift, bold action, but just 48 hours in, it's falling apart.
Yeah. I cannot think it was prudent to adopt a plan which, at this season, a fall of snow might render totally impractical. Colonel Thomas Graham, British Observer. Yeah. I mean, it seems silly. I'm not an expert, of course, as I've said before. But when I said in the previous videos, like, the weather plays a huge role in a lot of this stuff. And it just seems to me really weird to kind of have these guys marching through deep snow to do this sort of sneak attack. But, I mean, if you're going to do something like that, you have to have, it seems like you'd have to have a better system in place or a better leader. Now, I don't know if Napoleon could accomplish this too. I'm not going to say that or not, but it seems like the Austrians, again, are having issues with command and structure, and it doesn't seem like it's going to work out for them, but we'll see.
At Roverbella, Napoleon ponders the incoming reports. He knows that Joubert's forward outpost is under attack at Ferrara, that Massena has repulsed an Austrian attack on Verona, and Augereau faces a sizable Austrian force near Legnago, poised to cross the Adige. Is Alvinci using the same tactics as before, making his attack from the east? Then, a second report arrives from Joubert. His scouts have detected an enemy column marching around his flank. He has no doubt that he faces a major Austrian attack and has begun withdrawing his forces to Rivoli. "The report I have given you is exact," he tells his chief. "Be assured, the enemy will make every effort to throw me onto the blockade of Mantua."
Wow, okay.
The enemy's plan has been unmasked, Napoleon announces, and issues a flurry of orders. Massena is to march immediately to reinforce Joubert. Augereau is to send him cavalry and guns, while the rest of his division keeps watch on Provera. Ray is to move up to Castelnuovo. Serrurier is to be on high alert for an attempted breakout by the Mantua garrison. While Joubert, the youngest and least experienced of Napoleon's divisional commanders, is instructed to hold Rivoli at any cost, and assured that help is on the way.
Man, this music is awesome. Hype. My friends, Bonaparte demands a last effort from you to annihilate the remains of the Austrian army who have dared to come again and measure themselves against the Republicans. General Massena to his division. Yeah, this is getting hype, man. This music also makes it really exciting. But obviously things we've talked about before, Napoleon, just quick decisions. He makes a plan, moves on it. It's not like, okay, I'm going to take like 3-4 days to ponder this. It's just an instant, this is what we're going to do. Boom, we do it. If we have to adjust on the fly, we do it. But this is the game plan starting out.
After giving the Austrians a bloody nose at Ferrara, Joubert has extricated his troops overnight and taken up a defensive position around Rivoli. Napoleon arrives around midnight and immediately sets out with Joubert to inspect the enemy's positions. The weather had cleared and the moonlight was superb. I climbed the different heights and observed the lines of enemy fires. They filled the country between the Adige and Lake Garda, and the atmosphere was ablaze with them. One could easily distinguish 5 camps, each composed of a column. Until reinforcements arrive, Napoleon has just Joubert's division, 10,000 men, to hold off 24,000 Austrians. But Alvinci will help to even the odds by ordering Lusignan's first column to attempt a wide outflanking march to cut off the French line of retreat. And Napoleon decides the main road to Rivoli, which passes through a steep defile known as the Pontari, can be held by a single regiment supported by entrenched cannon. This leaves more manageable odds of 9,000 against 12,000 in the center. But Napoleon wants to push out his defensive line to hold the slopes that mark the edge of the Rivoli plateau.
The high ground.
At 4 a.m., General Vial's light infantry brigade advances through the darkness. They drive back the Austrian outposts and take the San Marco chapel. They're followed on their left by the rest of Joubert's division. But the French push too far. Skirmishes break out along the line with heavy fighting on the heights of San Marco. Napoleon had not wanted to start the battle so early, but the combat escalates. At dawn, the Austrians attack the plateau in force. The French 85th Demi-Brigade is outflanked and routed by Liptay's second column. The 29th Light, on its right, is forced to retreat, and it looks like the French line is crumbling. But the 14th, on their right, fights tenaciously. It's an intense infantry battle across broken ground, vineyards and walled gardens, with sudden charges, hurried withdrawals, and countercharges.
Wow. This is wild.
When the Austrians overrun a French battery, an officer demands, "14th, will you let them take your guns?" His troops mount a ferocious charge that routs the Austrians and reclaims the battery.
That's epic.
By 9 a.m., Massena's troops have begun to arrive. They take up position on Joubert's left. The buckled French line is stabilized. But so far, the French have only faced half of Alvinci's 6 columns. One by one, the others now join the action. Vukasovic's 6th column is on the far side of the Adige River. But its guns cause havoc among French troops holding the Pontari. Under this covering fire, Royce's 5th column charges up the narrow road and in fierce fighting storms the French entrenchments. This advance threatens the entire French right wing with encirclement, and a retreat begins. Moments later, gunfire to the southwest reveals Lusignan's 1st column has reached Affy, poised to cut off their escape. The French situation is desperate. They are outnumbered, surrounded, and under heavy attack. Napoleon's staff look anxiously to their commander, wondering what miracle can save the army now.
Yeah. All looks turned towards General Bonaparte, but after a short inspection, he limited himself to saying calmly, "They are ours." Wow. Napoleon's got a plan, man. Let's see what he can do.
Sensing victory, General Alvinci and his staff ride forward to urge his infantry on. Napoleon remains calm. He knows Alvinci's center columns are near exhaustion and that they have no cavalry and little artillery support. He identifies Royce's column as the most immediate threat and orders Joubert to send every man and gun he can spare for a counterattack. General Leclerc and a 21-year-old Captain Lassalle then charge with the entire French cavalry, just a few hundred horsemen. Under this onslaught, the lead Austrian troops are driven back into the gorge. Here, they collide with the rest of the column coming up. Cavalry and infantry jammed together, some pushing forward, others trying to escape. Joubert's men pour fire down on them from the overlooking ridge. The final straw is the devastating explosion of an ammunition wagon. Austrian morale breaks. The survivors flood back down the road to safety. Napoleon now turns his full attention to the center, where the exhausted Austrian columns have become spread out and disordered. The sudden appearance of French cavalry, supported by infantry and guns, sparks panic and a mass rout. Alvinci, who must have thought himself on the cusp of victory moments before, must join in an undignified race to the rear, spreading further alarm among his men. By 1 p.m., the bulk of the Austrian army is in headlong retreat, leaving Lusignan's first column in an awkward position. Completely isolated, he begins a fighting withdrawal. But the arrival of General Rey's brigade in his rear triggers a rout. Fewer than half of his 4,000 men escape. Through tenacity, courage, and good fortune, the army of Italy has turned a grim situation into an astonishing triumph. French casualties are modest. Austrian losses are devastating. Over the next few days, 5,000 more Austrians are captured as they struggle back through the mountain passes.
What's crazy about this too is, like, it's amazing how morale has such an effect. Both of these armies must have been tired, of course, and the Austrians had him surrounded. But it seems like, the Austrian morale just kind of broke, and that was what kind of assisted Napoleon in this victory. Is not only, obviously, Napoleon knew what he was doing and he didn't fear it, he had a plan, but I mean, the failure of the Austrians to kind of be organized as well as have a plan for, a counterattack or a plan to get up that ravine, helped a lot. I'm not trying to take anything from Napoleon, but I mean, like the narrator said, good fortune was definitely on Napoleon's side in this one, because, by all measures, the Austrians should have been able to encircle them. They had their armies everywhere, like surrounding him. So I would say, yeah, great victory, but also kind of on the Austrians on this one as well.
Napoleon will not be there to see it. He's received news that Provera has crossed the Adige and is marching on Mantua. It is a chance for him to strike one more blow against the enemy and to seal the fate of Mantua.
I'm not going to pronounce French, sorry. You are truly the spoiled child of victory. Napoleon to General Massena. Okay, let's see what happens here. I mean, he's already crushed the Austrians here in the north. Let's see if he can crush them again.
Leaving Joubert in command at Rivoli, with orders to renew the attack at dawn, Napoleon races south with Massena's division. Provera has no clue of the disaster that's engulfed Alvinci's army, nor that the wolves now gather for him. He pushes on to Mantua, shadowed by Augereau, who snaps up his rearguard, 2,000 men taken prisoner. With just 7,000 left, Provera's only hope is to break through the French siege lines. First, he tries to attack San Giorgio. Formidable French defences and a powerful cannonade stop him cold. The next day, he launches a coordinated attack with Wurmser against French forces at La Favorita. But Napoleon has now arrived with Massena's division from the north. Wurmser's weak, starving men are forced back into the citadel, while a determined charge by the 57th Demi Brigade smashes into Provera's flank. With Augereau approaching from the east, Provera faces impossible odds and surrenders with his entire force. Wurmser's last hope of rescue has been crushed. He puts off the inevitable for 2 agonizing weeks, until, with all food exhausted, he finally accepts terms for Mantua's surrender on the 2nd of February. He and an escort will return to Austria. His 16,000 remaining troops become prisoners. Austrian losses in the campaign reach a staggering 44,000 men. After 8 months, the siege of Mantua is over. A victory that will soon be celebrated on the streets of Paris.
You know what? I gotta still give it to the Austrians a little bit, though. They held out. They did what they could with what they had, while also saying that they also inflicted self-wounds many times with their inability to get any sort of cohesion or organization down. Had they been more organized and worked in a more cohesive manner, things may have been different in some of these battles. But such is history, I suppose, and they didn't do that. And so Napoleon showed what he could do. And that's how it went. Napoleon won. And of course, not only just Napoleon, but his generals. I mean, a lot of these guys are just as brave and just as young, apparently, as Napoleon. And Napoleon's troops. They were the ragged army of Italy. They still put up a heck of a fight. So.
But it is General Serrurier, not Napoleon, who takes the formal Austrian surrender. His commander-in-chief has already departed to take on his next opponent, the Pope.
Uh-oh. We will have everything that is beautiful in Italy, with the exception of a small number of objects in Turin and Naples. I suppose Naples is its own kingdom. I don't know. I think they're still at peace with France, so Napoleon's not going to, I guess, raid them.
From Rome, Pope Pius VI has once more been agitating against the French. And so Napoleon marches south with 9,000 men to explain the new realities of power in Italy. At Faenza, General Victor's division sweeps aside papal forces, and Ancona is taken without a fight. The subsequent Treaty of Tolentino forces the Pope to give up Romagna, as well as 30 million francs and 100 works of art. Belatedly, Napoleon's victories persuade the Directory to back him in force. French armies stuck on the Rhine are ordered to send him reinforcements. Their 34-year-old commander, another rising star of the French army, is congratulated on his brilliant winter crossing of the Alps. His name is General Jean Bernadotte. On the 10th of March, with 70,000 confident, seasoned troops under his command, Napoleon goes on the offensive. He sends Joubert to invade the Tyrol, Massena to advance up the Piave Valley, while he leads the bulk of the army on the most direct road to Vienna. The enemy is scattered and demoralized. Even the appointment of a new commander, the Emperor's own brother, Archduke Charles, fails to restore morale.
Yeah.
Charles is regarded as a military prodigy. He's 2 years younger than Napoleon and has defeated the armies of both General Jourdan and Moreau in Germany.
That's interesting.
But he does not have enough troops or time. He fights a delaying action at the Tagliamento River. But it ends in disaster when Bernadotte surrounds and captures 2,000 Austrians, 10 guns, and 8 standards. The French pursuit continues, with Massena covering Napoleon's northern flank. He arrives at Tarvis in time to block the Austrians' retreat. In 3 days' fighting, the French take another 3,000 prisoners.
Wow.
Napoleon's troops outmarch and outfight the Austrians at every turn. But his situation is more precarious than it seems. The other French armies are only just crossing the Rhine, while his own supply lines are now overextended and vulnerable. Rather than withdraw, Napoleon continues to advance, while proposing to Archduke Charles that they open peace negotiations. The Austrians accept. 2 days later, both sides agree an armistice, and peace talks begin at Leoben. After 5 years of conflict, Napoleon's dazzling advance into Austria has brought the War of the First Coalition to an end. So ends Napoleon's first campaign, almost exactly a year after it began.
1 year.
380 miles away on the shores of the Mediterranean.
Your countrymen will say as they point you out, he belonged to the army of Italy. Napoleon proclamation to the army. Yeah, it's wild. And I suppose at this point, if you're the Austrians, what can you really do? I mean, you gotta have to, I mean, you're gonna have to agree, right? You don't have the troops, you don't have the morale anymore. you're just kind of being needled every moment. You can't take a break. You can't rest. Napoleon's on your heels. I mean, the smart move, obviously is to armistice, peace negotiations, and maybe later on we can build up our forces again. But as of right now, the Austrians, it doesn't seem like they're in any position to fight. And at least from that map, they're kind of running out of allies in terms of like who they can call on for help. So it makes sense. And of course, Napoleon now showing what he can do will probably lead to further high command, I would assume. And obviously the army of Italy, the troops, they all understand who he is and what he can bring to the table. And, his sort of personality and demeanor is totally different from probably anything they've had before, really. And I think that goes a long way to victory. Not just having a leader that's smart and tactical, but a leader that also, you feel, has your back, that he's working for you just as much as you're working for him. And B, a leader who shows courage, who's not behind the lines. He's behind the lines, but he's also around you. He's egging you on. He's giving you words of encouragement, telling you, you can do this. You are strong. You're the army of Italy. Show courage. Those are huge.
Negotiations at Leoben become the basis for the Treaty of Campo Formio, signed 5 months later. The Austrian Netherlands, roughly modern Belgium, formally passed to France. The Venetian Republic, invaded and systematically looted by Napoleon's troops, is divided between France and Austria. So ends the 1200-year history of the Serene Republic of Venice. The famous horses of St. Mark are among its many treasures dispatched to the Louvre in Paris.
That's unfortunate.
To join its rapidly expanding Italian collection. The French part of Venice joins its other Italian client states to form a new Cisalpine Republic. The author of its constitution, Napoleon Bonaparte.
Wow.
It's an illustration of how far the 27-year-old general has come in just a year. Having waged one of the most brilliant military campaigns in history, many would say his best, he now dictates terms to kings and popes, summons new states into being, and nurtures his status as the most celebrated military commander in Europe. He has achieved all this thanks to formidable intelligence, relentless hard work, and inspiring leadership, which he has used to forge a unique bond of trust with his men. He's had luck, too, along the way, and been ably served by a group of brilliant officers, many of whom will be with him for years to come. For Napoleon still has many extraordinary things to achieve. His Italian campaign is just the first chapter in one of the most astonishing lives in history.
Incredible.
Did you know the Epic History TV merch store has a range of Napoleonic posters?
What an episode, man. That's crazy. That he went from, for example, like the Toulon video, he was just marching by. Gets put in charge of there. Dude is, the other guy got injured. Then gets put ahead of the army of Italy. Not really had much expectations from the directory. And people just do whatever, kind of like, whatever. Wins. builds up this reputation, shows what he can do, and then goes from just being a leader of an army to creating a new republic, making a constitution for it, and doing peace negotiations, doing armistice negotiations, all of that. And he's so young. And it's crazy to me to see how much influence he had and where he came from in such a short time. He'd only been in Italy a year. Years, it's a decent amount of time. A year's not that long, really. Especially, back then they didn't have like high-speed transportation. Like, it takes a while to even march to some place, let alone, do a battle. But that's amazing. What a great series this. Thank you guys for telling me to go back and watch this first. I'm gonna just continue like chronologically, going forward, see what he can do. I am interested to see, which I'm assuming we'll hopefully see at one point, what the powers that be in France think of Napoleon, because I would assume that some of them may be getting a little nervous, seeing how popular he's becoming and how celebrated, and also his skills. So I'm really excited to see. Hopefully, we get to see anyway what the more political side of it. I love seeing the battles, but I also like the politics side of it. It's actually really cool to me. I love the intrigue. I love the pomp and circumstance of all the the sort of back and forth court mechanics, I guess you could call it. The politicking, I love it. So again, thank you guys for joining me on this. Great series, Epic History TV, amazing. Go to their merch store, help them out. Subscribe to their Patreon if you can. And thank you for all the subscribers of this channel. We've been growing pretty good. I think I'm almost at 50. I don't know if I'm at there yet, but when I started this, I'm not here begging for subscribers or anything like that. I'm just want to learn with you guys, hear what you guys have to say. You guys comment down below and tell me more things, and I love it. It's amazing, because then now I know, and then it gives me a better view in my head going forward with more Napoleon content, which there's a lot of, to understand kind of his headspace and the sort of overall grand view of Europe at the time, which is really cool to see as well. So, thank you guys. Peace. We'll see you in the next one.